If you're considering a career in medical coding, it is so important to make sure that the program you choose is reputable. And that's why today I will be giving you tips on my top 5 red flags to look out for in your medical coding training program. Hey there, I'm Victoria. I'm a medical coder, auditor, educator, and content creator. And on my channel, I provide tips, tricks, and tutorials to help you be successful in a medical coding career. And I know how important it is to get into the right training program for you. And that's why today I'm going to be discussing my top 5 red flags to look out for in your medical billing and coding training program. Now, first and foremost, if you want me to just cut straight to the chase and tell you what is the best training program out there, it is definitely Preppy. You can find out more about Preppy by signing up for my medical coding masterclass, which is linked below. It has my gold star, it has my seal of approval. I have looked over the whole curriculum. You will not find anything better to learn medical billing and coding. Sign up though for the masterclass, because what it will do is it will give you that whole roadmap. It'll give you everything you need to know about medical billing and coding, all of the salary information, what the job outlook is, what certifications you should be preparing for. And it really highlights why Preppy is the best program out there, because it offers things that a lot of other programs don't, like a college certificate and an externship program. And they just provide so much support to all of my viewers that enroll in their programs. It's all on demand. You can take it at your own pace, and there's payment plans, so you don't have to worry about doing things like going into student loan debt. Again, you can sign up medicalcodingmasterclass.com. Link is in the description. Now let's talk about those red flags. So red flag number 1 in a program would be if they're not preparing you for a coding certification through AAPC or a HEMA. Now your program might direct you to a different organization to get your coding credential from, and that's fine as long as it still prepares you for one through AAPC or a HEMA, because that's really what employers are looking for. And chances are good you're not just learning medical coding for funsies, you actually want to get a job and build a career out of this. So if you want to be marketable as a medical coder, you want a credential through AAPC or a HEMA. If you're like, I'm confused, I don't know which one, go with the AAPC and get your CPC credential. I get a lot of questions about schools being approved for AAPC or approved for a HEMA. With the AAPC, there's really no approvals. Technically, you could take the test probably in a couple of hours as long as you paid for the exam and booked it online. Obviously, if you haven't studied for the exam, you probably won't do very well. A HEMA, the American Health Information Management Association, does have approved schools for a couple of their credentials, but not just the only coding credentials. The RHIT, which is the Registered Health Information Technician, or RHIA, and the advanced degrees there, you do have to go through an approved school, but if you're just looking for your coding certification, just the CCS they call it, or the CCSP through a HEMA, you don't really need to have an approved program for that. You may see some programs that say they're AAPC approved or an AAPC approved education provider, and that doesn't mean that you have to go through that program, otherwise you can't sit for the exam. What that essentially means is that that particular program is licensed through the AAPC. They license the official curriculum that the AAPC has developed for that credential. Honestly, there's a ton of programs out there that will prepare you just as well, if not better, for medical coding than the ones that are just using the AAPC curriculum. Now, the next red flag to look out for is if the program is either ridiculously cheap or ridiculously expensive. You may find programs out there on discount course websites or even things like Groupon that claim they will teach you medical coding. And we're talking like ridiculously low, like $30, $40 for the course. And honestly, this is just one of those too good to be true type of scenarios. Honestly, the cost is so low because the quality isn't there. It might be outdated, it might not be very interactive, it might be stolen content, or it could just be very basic that it's going to teach you some maybe 101 essentials, but not prepare you for a certification that you need for employment. So it's likely not going to prepare you to be successful in a career in medical coding. And honestly, can you even imagine sitting on an interview and telling your employer that you learned medical coding through a course you got on Groupon? You'll probably get turned over for that job for someone who had more elaborate training. On the opposite end, you'll also see some programs that are ridiculously expensive, particularly if they're provided through a college. Now, I talk more about this in the masterclass, but essentially what happens is a lot of these colleges are required by the government to fit programs into these little 2-year or 4-year packages. So because of that, they'll make you take these courses that aren't really necessary for you to be successful in the field, like art or philosophy. And they'll say, oh, well, they'll make you more well-rounded, but really it's because they probably get some sort of funding or grants or have to meet these requirements to fit that program in the box. So they'll take things that you could really learn in a few months and make them fit into that 2-year degree box, not because it's the best thing for the learner, but because that's what they're required to do. Now, red flag number 3 is if the program itself is too short. Now, I want to preface this by saying that everyone learns at different speeds, and of course, someone who has healthcare experience, they've worked in a billing office or have some clinical knowledge, they're going to be ahead of someone who's coming out and doesn't know medical terminology or pharmacology or anything like that. So someone who's very familiar with MedTerm, with insurance, with these details of healthcare, they can probably learn medical coding in a shorter period of time than someone who doesn't have that experience. And there are some good condensed programs out there. I've known some LPNs that because of their prior experience were able to take a 3-day boot camp and then have a successful career in medical coding. So for some, they really are a good fit, but they're not a fit for everyone. Some people need a better pace. They need something that's more structured, where they say, hey, this week we're going to go over this chapter, and they have certain goals set over a longer period of time. Medical coding is something that you really get better at the more that you practice. So I feel that the majority of people, just generally speaking, do better when they have a longer program, meaning a couple of months. So while it may be tempting to take one of these boot camp style trainings where you learn medical coding in a matter of a few days, understand that those don't work for everyone. Most people, for them to be successful in learning coding and passing their certification exam, it's typically 3 to 6 months. I'm not saying you can't learn the basics of medical coding in a few days. You probably could learn some basics. I teach some basics here of medical coding where you could learn some of the 101 tools. But if you're looking for that longevity, you want a career in this, you need to know that this is a dedicated lifelong learning process. Pace yourself, really absorb some of these different guidelines in coding, understand what you're getting into, really develop your skills, pass that certification, get involved, get networking, and then you can have a really great, successful, profitable career. It's kind of akin to like crash dieting, where there's some people that can work really hard and get their bodies to lose 10 pounds in a weekend, but for the majority of people to lose 10 pounds, it's going to take a few weeks, if not a month or two. Now, our next red flag is if there's no job assistance or externship available. Now, it's not entirely a deal breaker. There have been people who have been very successful that never did an internship, externship, or had job placement through their training programs. But it definitely puts you at a much better place when you have those opportunities available. It is a lot to navigate and put together, so you will find good programs that will train you very well, but don't offer that job assistance or the internships. However, if you spend any time whatsoever on any medical coding Facebook groups, Reddit groups, anything like that on social media, you'll definitely see that one of the common complaints that people have is difficulty finding a job. So if one of the things you'll commonly see is, oh, how do I get all the experience and then how do I get a job? And you already have a program that sets you up for success. It's provided you an externship. It's provided you assistance with finding a job. You'll be a lot further ahead. Now, on a side note, the AAPC does have a program that they call Project Extern, which does help place certified coders with externship sites. However, they are very, very limited, and in some locations there really isn't anything available at all. I will link it in the description in case you want to check it out, but because of things like the heavy privacy regulations on medical information, it's really hard to find volunteer positions or positions where you can just kind of come in and shadow people and get experience. There's just a lot of red tape that has to be gone through with compliance, with setting up the appropriate settings if you're given access to like an electronic medical record, and even things like making sure that that department has the capacity to foster that sort of relationship. It's not like walking into Dairy Queen and asking if you can see how they dip the ice cream cones. There's a lot of sensitive patient information involved. And the last red flag is if the curriculum doesn't cover all of the aspects of medical coding. Now, having said that, there's different types of coding, there's different credentials in medical coding, so you might find a freaking fantastic bangarang program that prepares you for the CPC, which wouldn't need to teach you like ICD-10 PCS. That's a type of coding that you don't need to know in professional fee coding. So I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about the things that aren't pertinent to that certification that you're preparing for that aren't going to be on the exam. I'm talking more about things like not teaching you about medical billing, not teaching you about insurances, not teaching you about claim forms, the federal regulations, how to research a coding problem, and how to tell what is an official guideline in coding. Now, years and years ago, it was true that some of the certifications only really tested you on just how to code, but that's changed. There's a lot more questions on the certification exams now that are testing you on more than just how to abstract a code. Some of them will really, really make you think, and they will test you on your knowledge of the guidelines. Not that you have them memorized, but you know like where the guideline is and how to apply it to that scenario that they're asking you about. Things like, what is the Medicare code for a flu vaccination? What's considered a covered entity under HIPAA? How can you code for a locum tenens situation? Some programs are pretty basic in nature, and you will find oftentimes in the technical schools and colleges, they might scramble to find a medical coding instructor, particularly if like one left and didn't come back. And what happens is they'll get like a nurse or someone in the healthcare program or just anyone maybe that they can even find to fill in. And that instructor will just basically read slides and grade papers. You can't really ask them a lot of technical questions about the industry. They don't have that knowledge. So how do you determine if a medical coding program is right for you? Well, by looking out for those red flags that I have identified in this video. But of course, the best way to avoid all of those red flags is by signing up for Preppy, which has helped tons of my viewers prepare for careers in medical coding. With 24/7 access to online self-paced learning, Preppy will help you gain all of the knowledge that you need to be successful in medical coding. Plus, there's lots of payment plans available, so you don't have to go into student loan debt. Definitely check out medicalcodingmasterclass.com, linked below. I will see you guys in the next video, and until then, just keep on coding on.